You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I am not on mute anymore.
Now you're not. Now you are not.
I am not. It is Sunday morning, week 15 playoffs. Hopefully, you guys are in the playoffs along with myself and Cyclop, who's also in the playoffs. We didn't have good days on yesterday, but who knows? We'll see what happens. In the meantime, I know a lot of you out there in the playoffs, so we want to be able to help you out. That's what we're here to do at the Fantasy Football Buzz podcast. Good morning. How are you doing, Cyclop?
Man, I was feeling good going into yesterday, and then our buddy Josh Allen decided to just crush me, and and I have Aaron Rodgers, and he decided to crush me. It was pretty much a crushing day, but I'm still in it. You never give up hope. You see scores change quickly,
right?
And you try to get through it.
All it takes is that one or two, great players, great scores that will really boost you. I remember at one point during the season, I was playing against Devontae Adams, who went nuts, had like 3 touchdowns, almost 200 yards. And I actually won that week because my guys actually did well. So you never know what's going to happen until the last minute.
Yeah. You try to go through and you try to say, what did I learn from this week? Or so far, right? This is an unusual week where we've had 3 games going into Sunday morning instead of 1. And I'll tell you, I learned that Josh Allen is going to be a top 3 quarterback pick next year in the fantasy draft, I think.
Yeah, I want to talk about that for a second, because if you remember, all of the experts had picked Josh Allen to be, I believe, in the top 5 or at least top 10 quarterbacks. And I just remember myself, you, just about everybody was saying there's no way.
Right. Because he ran so much last year. He didn't have a great passing year.
He was inaccurate. He ran. He didn't have receivers. And now Josh Allen is a completely different player. Yeah. And I kind of feel like, maybe the experts knew what they were saying at the beginning of the season.
And you look at his season, he started off really hot. I think the first 4 or 5 weeks, he was 40, 50 points a week. And then he kind of had a middle lull for a little bit and was hurting those people. And then all of a sudden, the past few weeks, he's been, number 1 fantasy quarterback.
Absolutely. Well, listen, before we get started today, we've got Kenneth on the phone. Kenneth, how you doing today?
Hey, appreciate that. The reason why I'm calling is I have a bit of a situation in my flex spot. I have David Johnson starting. Should I roll with him? I have TTQT, Corey Davis, Jeff Wilson Jr., and a DJ Chark available on my bench.
Who do you have starting, did you say?
David Johnson.
David Johnson.
Against Indy, which is a tough one.
Yeah, and that's also Kuti. And Brandon Cooks is back, right? So,
and who are your other options besides Kuti and David Johnson?
I have Corey Davis. He's playing.
Oh, no, it's Corey Davis.
Yeah, Corey Davis.
Yeah, Corey Davis for sure.
And I do have a bit of an update on a couple players, but I'll wait until you go through them to see if there's any that you cover.
That sounds great, Kenneth. We appreciate that.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take
Kenneth,
care.
Talk to you in a little bit. All right, so keeping with the call and the questions, Javi has come in and said, do you want to start Gronk or Goddard to give him an STD?
As STDs go, I think Gronk is probably
your better bet.
your better bet. And this is standard.
Yeah.
Right.
So standard.
Standard, as much as I like Goddard, I think Gronk against the Atlanta pass defense, which has been proven all year to not be able to stop anybody, is probably your best bet. So in this case, I would go with Gronk. I don't know if you agree. Look, I got Goddard.
Who does Goddard play? I'm sorry.
Goddard plays against Arizona.
Arizona, right. I'm Gronk is like that weekly player who is either going to get like 2 catches for 30 yards or 3 catches for 75 yards.
And
it seems he's not really getting touchdowns on a regular basis. It is Atlanta. I don't know.
The problem is with Goddard is that we haven't seen enough of Jalen Hurts and Goddard. Right. We knew that Goddard and Wentz had very good chemistry. I'm actually, I have Logan Thomas and Goddard. I project both to have about the same amount of points, but I'm going to roll with Goddard because I really think that they're limited in their targets, and plus they have Dwayne Haskins starting today in Washington. So, but if it's between Goddard and Gronk, I'm going with Gronk, both on the STD and for fantasy football.
Okay. I hate to do this to you, Javi, but I'm going to go with Goddard there. I just never, this whole season, and I know Gronk's had a few decent games, I just haven't had a good feeling about Gronk just because there's so many other receivers there and even tight ends. And I don't know, just not loving Gronk today.
All right. I mean, I'm looking at it strictly from a ceiling, but also because we're talking about a standard league, if this was PPR, I might lean a little more toward Goddard.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's true.
But all right. So sorry, Javi. We kind of split on this one. If you have any questions like Javi had, or you have questions that you want to call us at 772-800-BUZZ like Kenneth does, or you can comment in Facebook Live or YouTube Live, and we will answer your questions live on air. Hopefully we won't split like we just did, but at least we'll go through the analysis with you. It's always good to get another opinion, and that's what we are here for. And Brad, what we're going to do today is we're kind of just going to go through some of the positions, some of the updates and the news, just some quick hits to see what's going on and people to be ready for their last minute lineups. Obviously we're not going to hit everything. We're not going to tell you everybody that should be in a lineup, but we'll give you some information. Do you want to start with quarterbacks?
Why don't you start with wide receivers?
Sure. Okay.
And I'll get into to quarterbacks.
Sure. So on the wide receiver front, there's some interesting news. We know that Marquis Brown with Baltimore was activated off the COVID list. He is on track to play today against the Jaguars. So, it's a good matchup for Marquis Brown. They don't have a lot of weapons there. So at the same time, Lamar Jackson doesn't throw a lot, but when he does, it's usually to Brown.
Right.
So it's not a bad start today. We do know that Michael Thomas is out. He was put on injured reserve. Look for Traquan Smith and Emmanuel Sanders and even Jared Cook to pick up the slack. As to which of those receivers are actually going to be starring or will have a lot of points, we don't know. We don't know how Drew Brees is going to do. Maybe those ribs aren't as good as they were hoping they would be once he gets hit for the first time.
We'll see.
So we'll see. The Boston Globe, they reported that Julian Edelman, he will not be activated against the Dolphins today. So look for Jacoby Myers as really the only potential fantasy impact player on that team. Deebo Samuel with the 49ers, he's been ruled out also with that hamstring injury. Brandon Ayuk, look for him to have a really good day. I have him ranked within my top 10 this week for wide receivers. I like Brandon Ayuk. Obviously bench Deebo Samuel if you have him. Brandon Cooks, as Brad had told you, he practiced in full on Friday. He was limited all week. He practiced. It looks like he's in. The Lions, as always, have declared that Kenny Galladay is out for Week 15. I don't know how many games he's played this week. If you picked up Kenny Galladay, I'm sorry. If you picked up Kenny Galladay and Michael Thomas, I'm very sorry. Now, I picked up Julio Jones, and I'm sorry for myself because he is out. Look for Gage to serve as the number 2 receiver with the Falcons. Not sure how effective he will be, but Julio Jones is out. I actually think Hayden Hurst might end up picking up some of the slack there in Atlanta. Jakeem Grant, all week, he was limited in practice because of a hamstring issue. He is not expected to play today against the Patriots. So look for Devontae Parker, who's also had a hamstring injury. Mckissick, who had the shoulder. They're questionable today. We don't know until the last minute if they're going to be playing. So as far as Dolphin receiver options, there aren't a lot to choose from on the fantasy side. Lynn Bowden Jr. might be your only option at this point if you have to reach. And really, that's all the news I have on wide receivers. As comments and questions and calls come in, we can talk about matchups against cornerbacks. We know people like Chris Godwin are going to have an amazing day today based upon their matchup. So if you have questions on which wide receiver matchups are the best today, we're here for you. Let's now jump. Where do you want to go today? Now, do you want to go?
Yeah, we'll go to quarterbacks.
All right.
As far as quarterbacks out, there's not a ton. Obviously, Stafford is out. You're not starting his replacement there in Detroit. Don't do it.
Yeah, no.
They don't have Galladay. Just let that go. A couple of interesting quarterbacks, and I know we talked about this the other day. Now, Carr was an interesting one that I brought up. Of course, he gets hurt. Mariota comes in and looks really good.
Yeah.
Now, you're not necessarily, I don't know what the matchup is next week, but if you have a team
Miami
quarterback and you had started Carr, right, they play Miami next week, right? You would have been in great shape with Mariota coming in and running and doing his thing, but probably not a lot of people did that. A couple of nice starts. Mullins going against Dallas today. Hopefully the running game gets going. The passing game will open up. Ayuk, Mullins could have a really nice day in Dallas. They have also come out and said Garoppolo probably will not be back in 20. Although, and I know, the tight end,
Kittle.
Yeah, Kittle very well may be back potentially for next week.
Not this week, but maybe next week.
We're not this week, maybe next week, right?
Right.
You got Rivers against Houston. If you have him as your backup and you're not sure what to do, he's a nice start. I think he's just going to have a field day against the Houston defensive backs today. Brady against Atlanta. Now, Brady is a quarterback that, he's been kind of a matchup quarterback this year, right? He can have big days, right? So this is a nice matchup. You have Atlanta. His wide receivers are healthy. Obviously, his running back.
Evans,
No. His running back,
Ronald Jones with the pin in his finger.
But they have McCoy, they have Fournette, so right. It's not like they're dropping off a cliff there. They're going to be fine at running back. Jared Goff against the Jets, another kind of streamer quarterback this year that seems to be on and off people's rosters, and you're going against the Jets. My hope today, and I don't know that it will happen, but Akers does not have a good day, but he is going against the Jets. Only that's personal, but passing, they should have a good day against the Jets as well. You got Roethlisberger today going against Cincinnati. Very nice matchup. They're looking to get back on track with the last few games going into the playoffs. So look for them to try to get things right because they've certainly been off the last few weeks. A matchup that might not be so great today. Mayfield going against the Giants. I think they're going to try to run the ball as they've been doing. I don't know that they're going to have to air it out today against the Giants, right? Because hopefully, potentially the Giants won't be scoring a lot. So it's not going to be a 45-42 game like it was last week in Baltimore. So I don't know that that's a great matchup. And the Giants defense has been playing better. So be careful if you have Mayfield there. Also, Drew Brees, as you mentioned before, he's coming back. He loses Michael Thomas. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad start if you have him, but I think they're going to try to lean on Kamara. They do have very capable receivers, and Brees has never really been the one to worry if his top receiver wasn't there. Right early in the season, Emmanuel Sanders picks up the slack, or Traquan Smith, or all of a sudden he'll throw 15 targets to Jared Cook, or whatever the case may be. But I don't know that that's a good start today, since he's just coming back off of the IR. So that's some quarterback news.
You mentioned a few players like Drew Brees and Mullins. I just want to say this, as we're in the playoffs and people are trying to start their lineups, don't get fancy, guys. Right? You're in the playoffs. If you have a starter who's done well for you all season, start him. Don't start looking at this point for your good matchups. Go with your starters. Go with the people who got you there. Unless you're talking about Keenan Allen, go with the people who got you there to start. in all of the positions, not just quarterback. However, it's important to know if you're a quarterback, if you had Stafford, if you had somebody who isn't playing, then Brad's right. You can go with somebody like Mullins. I would be worried about Brees so we don't know what we're going to see. He had a serious injury. And when he's practicing, they don't touch him.
Right.
So it's hard to tell in practice how he's going to be. All right. So let's talk about tight ends real quick, and then we'll double back and we'll go to running backs. There's really not a lot of tight end news. Brad, you've already mentioned about Kittle. Shanahan said he won't play this week, but it is possible that Kittle might play next week. But we don't know. We know that Kyle Rudolph is out against the Bears. So look for Irv Smith to have all of those tight end targets. He's had good weeks in the past, but it is against a tough Bears defense. Evan Ingram, he is expected to play, and Jimmy Graham is expected to play. None of these guys, obviously, if you have Ingram, you've probably suffered all year with not knowing how he's going to do. If you have somebody better, you can start him. I don't necessarily recommend that you start someone like Ingram this week, unless obviously you have no choice. I have him ranked as my number 9. So if you are kind of desperate, you can go with someone like Evan Ingram. And really, that's all I have on the tight end side. If I'm going to, since tight ends, there's not a lot of news, I'm going to go ahead and I'll just give you, based on a PPR format, where I stand with regard to my tight end rankings. Obviously, you have to go with the best tight end in the market. And even though people might say it's Darren Waller, I still think for your money, you got to go with Kelsey, Mark Andrews, then Hawkinson. At that point, Gronk, like we talked about earlier, Eric Ebron, then Evan Ingram, then either Logan Thomas or Dallas Goedert. So that's my tight end ranks for this week. Brad, what's going on with running backs?
Yeah, so running backs was, we've already had a few play. And last week, it was interesting, on our show Tuesday, I brought up Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
Right. He's been trending downwards. Now, he had a nice day. He scored a touchdown. He had a couple catches. But his running, if you look at it, he had like 25 carries for 75 yards. So it's not like he was lighting it up. He was just getting the workload.
Yeah.
So it gave him points for the week. Now, that's good. But, you look at it on a per carry basis, and it's not great. But if you did start him, you got points for him. You're happy. Between his catches and everything, on a half point, I think he ended up around 16 or 18 points. So that's a nice day from your running back. This week, Zeke, be very careful starting him. He's got injury issues. He's, splitting time. I think last week he had 13 carries and Pollard had 11, I believe is the number.
Yeah.
They're going against a tough San Francisco team this week. If they fall behind, you may just see them kind of go to Pollard more for the passing game. He's already been not questionable, but a questionable start now for several weeks since, the whole quarterback issues and whatnot. Clyde Edwards-Helaire going against the Saints. I'd be a little careful here. Saints have a very good rush defense, and, they're in what you would think it's going to turn into a passing game more, and they may use Bell a little bit more today. So if you have Helaire and you're counting on him, be very careful. Todd Gurley, this is just, I got rid of him at the right time earlier in the year. And, his arthritis, and they're just going to use him in spots and near the goal line. If you get a touchdown from him, you're very happy, but I wouldn't count on much. Talked about Melvin Gordon the other day, that his stock was rising a bit. And what happened? He had a nice day yesterday. He had a couple touchdowns. And that's good. David Montgomery, rising. Start him if you got
Lindsey, by the way. I'm sorry to go back to the Broncos.
Yeah.
He just looks like he's lost a step, right? I mean, it used to be that every time he touched the ball, he was so dynamic.
Yeah.
And it really looks like he's lost a step. And I know he was injured, but
I was watching a little bit yesterday, and he got the first 3 carries of the game. I believe.
Yeah, he did.
And he had 15 or 16 yards on it, so not bad. But he just seems when he's getting to the outside, he's not making the right cuts, is what I saw when I was watching him play.
Exactly what I saw.
Either he's missing the cuts up the field.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah, so
No,
that's
go
kind of
ahead,
what I was
sorry.
saying. I am going. You there? Okay. Swift, he's clearly the back that Detroit is going to be moving to. What you got to be careful there is with Stafford out, they're going to be able to stack the line a little bit. So you got to be careful if you're counting on him today. Obviously, Leonard Fournette in for Ronald Jones. They have the rookie there, Vaughn. They have McCoy. So Fournette should get the workload there today. So if you're looking for someone that running backs is kind of the position this year that everyone's scrambling for. I was scrambling all week. I think I picked up 3 guys this week. I'm picking up Gus Edwards. I'm picking up Fournette. Mostert now is starting, and against Dallas, so I'm sticking with him.
And Fournette is starting against the Falcons, so it was a good pickup.
But I'm not going to sit Robinson.
Right.
It's like, again, don't get too fancy. I'm not going to start Fournette over Robinson. Most of your other running backs, Chubb and obviously Henry and Kamara and all these other guys are pretty set as far as what you're going to do. You got J.D. McKissick in Washington going against a Seattle kind of up and down defense this year. Of course, Gibson is out this week, correct?
Yeah.
Or he was questioned. I thought he was potential.
It hasn't been ruled out.
Okay, hasn't been ruled out, right? Okay.
Right.
So all your other running backs are pretty standard. Miles Sanders might be an interesting play this week. He's all of a sudden, picking it up, and it's against Arizona, who's up, some points lately. So if you have him, go there. It sounds like you have a call coming in.
Yeah, Kenneth, how are you?
Hey, there's a couple of running backs you forgot to mention when y'all did the update. From what I'm hearing, James White is expected to play, and Damian Harris is out. And also Jamal Williams is questionable.
Okay. He already played. Played last night.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Right.
No problem.
It's questionable for next week.
James White is expected to play, and Damian Harris is out.
All right. Well, thank you, Kenneth. That's a game we'll be watching today for sure. We appreciate it.
That's interesting. They're going against a tough
Heads up about that. Y'all forgot to mention that.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So that actually leads us into our next question here that we have, Kamish, is he needs one as a flex: Mostert, Carson, Sony Michel, or Jeff Wilson. Now, with Harris out, does that move, Sony Michel up a little bit here? Now, I think you have better options here.
No, if anything, it'll just be Cam Newton running. But as far as that list, you got to go with Chris Carson. I don't even know why it's a question.
Yeah, it's against Washington.
I understand it's against Washington, and there are other guys that you might start above Chris Carson. But when the ball's on the goal line or it's in the red zone, it's Carson time. So, if the opportunity is there, it's going to be Carson. Yes. And I know Hyde has been hurt during the week, and he will split some carries with Hyde, but Carson will still get the workload there. So I would definitely go with Carson.
Yeah, I'm going to say out of those for Jeff Wilson, when you have Mostert and Wilson, which is interesting, and those guys almost cancel each other out and moves Carson up to the top of the line. Now,
and I understand that with PPR and Carson doesn't catch a lot of passes, but the scoring opportunities are there.
Right.
For Carson. So that's who I would go with for this week. We were talking about running backs, and we had mentioned earlier David Johnson. Somebody, I think it was Javi, had asked a question about David Johnson, or maybe it was Kenneth. But with Duke Johnson being ruled out and CJ Prosise kind of not being a good running back, David Johnson is really going to be their only option. I know it's against Indianapolis, but I do see David Johnson's workload increasing. It just, I don't expect them to be a top 10 running back this week, but it's not a bad play if you have him.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So I have a question for you regarding that, because I believe, David Johnson on my roster.
Right.
Okay. And I have David Montgomery. I have Wayne Gallman or Nick Chubb. Do you put him in for any of those players? Nick Chubb, no. Gallman against Cleveland or David Montgomery against Minnesota? Does he go in for either of those?
Montgomery's been having such a good few weeks.
Yeah.
I got to go with Montgomery at this point. I really do. Over, obviously not over Chubb. Chubb is an in. But if you're looking for two, it would be Chubb and Montgomery, in my opinion.
So I have David Johnson, Sony Michel, J.D. McKissick, all on my bench in this league.
Yeah, it sounds like a bench players. But okay, listen, if you have any questions, give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ, or give us or a comment in Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Ask us any questions. I'm curious what your playoff roster looks like. We have a feeling a lot of the playoff rosters look similar because these are guys that have stepped up for you week after week. And also, how are you doing after this week's games so far? And if you're in a bad position like we are because of Thursday night and Saturday. So, go ahead and give us a call or comment, YouTube Live or Facebook Live.
So going back to C. Chav's question about Mostert, Carson, Michel, and Wilson, I have Carson around 12 or 13 RB this week, and both Mostert and Wilson around 22 to 20, 22, 23. They're back to back. So, definitely Carson is your guy out of those four.
Well, whenever you have a sharing to the extent that San Francisco does, yes, there's going to be sharing in Seattle, but not to the extent that we have in San Francisco.
Right.
As far as, let me see, do you have anything else you wanted to talk about on the running back side?
No, all the other ones, thanks to Kenneth for that update on Harris, but most of the other ones are obvious. If you got Derrick Henry, you're starting him. If you have, so there's not really much else out there that I saw that was glaring as far as having to make decisions.
All right. So what I wanted to do was talk about some of the wide receivers that might be listed as a wide receiver 3 or 2 or 3, and you're trying to decide between them, and kind of just talk about their matchups real quick. Antonio Brown, most likely, we don't know for sure, but he'll most likely be up against A.J. Terrell with Atlanta. So look for Antonio Brown to win that matchup today. Other guys that obviously all of your starters you got to go with. But even Tyler Lockett, which bothers me because I'm playing against him, he's going to be up against Jimmy Moreland. Washington does have a very good pass defense, but Jimmy Moreland is not great in the slot, and that's where Tyler Lockett feeds. So look for Tyler Lockett to possibly have a good day today.
Lockett's been that player. Hold on. So Lockett's been that player. It's either like feast or famine. Right. And he would, beginning of the season, he was kind of getting his 6, 7, 8 catches, and then he had some big games, and then he disappears. And it's so frustrating when you have players like that, especially when you're, you've made it this far into the, and you're in the playoffs. It can certainly be frustrating.
Well, I really hope he disappears today. Golden Tate, we haven't mentioned him a lot. He's going to be in the slot for the Giants against Cleveland this week. Cleveland defense hasn't been that great, even though I'm starting them this week, and he's up against MJ Stewart. Golden Tate might be a sneaky start if you really are desperate this week for the Giants. And other than that, all of your typical starters, go ahead and start them. There's nobody that I would tell you who would be in your main lineup to sit as a result of a matchup. Right. The closest that I would come would be Deontay Johnson, who, again, unfortunately, I'm starting because he's going to be covered by William Jackson with Cincinnati, which is not a great matchup because he's a very good corner. So it's going to be tough for him. So sorry, Brad, but look for Claypool to possibly step up this week. And that's really all I have on the wide receiver front. It doesn't look like we're getting a lot of questions in. Kenneth wants to know Mahomes versus Saints or Watson versus Colts. If you have Mahomes, you start Mahomes. You never sit Mahomes. Yeah. Watson won't have a bad day, but if you're asking between Mahomes and Watson, it's going to be Mahomes. If it's Mahomes or anybody, I'm going to say Mahomes.
I think the bigger question here is, how do you have both of those guys on your roster?
Right. Yeah, I know. We've heard some questions in that league and the availability of certain players, and we're like, we want to be in that league.
Right. Maybe it's a daily fantasy league he's doing. I don't know. But yeah. What did you think about Justin Herbert the other night?
I think Herbert looked good, except for giving up that sack, which actually could have lost the game for them. I'm glad they won, obviously, because it helps the Dolphins' position in the playoffs in that game. But he looks really good. I think that we're going to have a very interesting rookie class this past year. I think Herbert, Burrow, Tua, all of them are going to be quarterbacks of the future and franchise quarterbacks for their teams. So I think it's going to be a good class.
Yeah, it's looking like it is. Herbert, to me, Burrow is having a great year as well. Obviously, Tua's in playing now. He's looking better each week. His confidence in there. But Herbert, to me, he looks like it's like they plugged him in and he was good to go, and he's been doing it all season.
Right.
Again, the amazing thing, he got plugged in because of a puncture from a needle.
Yeah, that's true.
Back and it's like, okay, we found our guy.
Well, look, if his knock in college, there were two things. It was his accuracy and his decision making. Right. Right now, his accuracy he seems to be doing really well on his accuracy. Maybe they changed his footwork. Who knows what they did? But as far as decision making, there's still some issues. And I know he's a rookie, but there's still some issues that he needs to fix. I think he's got a very good group of players around him. He's got a very good offensive line. He's got great receivers. He's got one of the best tight ends in the league. So all of that will help him moving forward. So, once is kind of like with Josh Allen. I think as the years go by, he'll get better and better and better.
Right.
And I feel the same way about Burrow, and I feel the same way about Tua. In fact, if you look at Tua's stats from this past week against the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, they were actually comparable, if not better, than what Herbert did the other night. So, I think everyone's going to get better, at least out of those three. The question will be people like Jalen Hurts. What's going to happen with them? What's going to happen with Carson Wentz? Is he going to be traded? And if he gets traded, I think Carson Wentz is startable on a team that has a line and weapons. The question is, who's going to take that chance, except for, probably New England.
Right. So we do have a question coming in. Then I want to ask you a question about the accuracy issue. So we'll do that after this. Okay. Pick 2, Matt Ryan, Brees, Mullins, and Cousins.
Wow.
Okay. That's an interesting league. But okay. So we have 2 questions from Jose. Okay. So pick 2, Ryan, Brees, Mullins, or Cousins. We talked about Brees and not having the full he loses Michael Thomas, and you just don't know how he's going to be coming back today after missing 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Matt Ryan always, this year it just seems like he's not putting up the fantasy numbers that you would want from your starter. Cousins.
Okay.
I know. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to give you my quick analysis. It'll take 2 seconds. Based on my rankings and based on what I've seen, I would go with Cousins and Ryan. They're both ranked pretty low, 15 and 20 in my rankings. The only, Brees has the highest ceiling out of all of them because he could be back to normal. But the only problem is if it's not team quarterback where Taysom Hill comes in and you get those points, right, I would still be worried about starting Brees because we don't know what he's going to be like after that first hit. So since we can't play around in the playoffs, my feeling is you got to go with Cousins and you got to go with Matt Ryan.
So what I didn't look up and I'm trying to look up now is the Chicago Minnesota game. Is that inside or outside?
That game is Let's see, Chicago.
I'm trying to find that because that can have some bearing whether,
It's
when you're
at
talking
Minnesota,
about.
so it is
Okay,
inside.
it's inside. Okay. So, I'm going to go with Cousins. This is kind of like it's against the grain a little bit, but I'm going to go with Cousins and Mullins. Mullins has Ayuk, he's got
against
running
Dallas.
backs that can throw screens. It's an against Dallas.
Yeah.
Ryan is going against Tampa Bay, which we know also can give up points, but I don't know if it's going to be against Atlanta. They're missing Julio Jones. They've had some drops. Their running game is not really intact at this point. So I'm going to go with Cousins and Mullins out of these two. And I know that might be against the grain a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. Those are tough quarterbacks. I'm surprised you don't have somebody better to. I guess if it's a 2-quarterback league, you're kind of limited.
Right. Well, you have Brees. It was probably, from Ryan and Brees when you're talking about drafting early in the season.
Right.
When you're talking about drafting before, those are good guys. All right, then. So I'll say from Jose, we have McKissick or Jeff Wilson Jr. with a full point PPR, and I'm going with McKissick here.
Yeah, I would go with McKissick as well. Again, let me see. It's McKissick or see, you're dealing with the share, and with Gibson being doubtful. I agree. You got to go with McKissick on this one.
Yep. And then it looks like a question just for you.
Oh boy. Connor or Wilson Jr. again. Connor has been very disappointing, and I know to you probably you're very concerned and upset about Connor, but he is the starter, and he is most likely going to be the one to get the ball on the goal line, where Wilson, even though he could end up being the guy who gets 75% of the carries, we won't know that. At least we know Connor will. So I would go with Connor today, which means you'll probably go with.
I would probably go with Wilson.
Okay. You really like San Francisco today.
It's against Dallas.
Yeah, I understand that.
I don't know. I have it might again. It's probably personal. I have Mostert. I'm starting him. I'm going with him. I'm looking for him to hopefully at least get in the end zone.
Yeah.
So I think they could do it. Hopefully they start him early and he gets a couple of those 9 to 12 yard gains, and then they are like, okay, let's lean on him for a while and go from there. And then he'll probably get down to the 3, and then they'll put Wilson in. So it'd be great.
Looks like Kenneth's calling again.
All right.
Hey, Kenneth.
Add Gibson to the list of inactives.
All right.
Look, I just looked it up, and he is indeed out.
All right. We appreciate that. So McKissick is the guy to go with today.
I appreciate y'all taking my call. Talk to y'all later.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Our man in the field.
He is. He's our reporter.
All right. Do you have anything else for today?
No, it's just kind of going over a couple of the games that have already been played. What I didn't do today was look up any weather issues, but I don't think there's much.
By the way, I'm sorry. Devontae Parker has also been just put on the inactive list as well.
Inactive. Okay. And we kind of knew that was coming.
Right.
So yeah, and Grant is out, right?
Well, Grant is out. Gesicki is out. Parker is out.
Okay. Yeah.
So Eric Flowers is out. So it's going to be a tough day against New England today.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. That's for sure. They'll have to lean on some other guys, and when you have a rookie quarterback like that, does that make it easier or harder? Because he doesn't have the expectations of some of those players. So he's like, okay, I'll just throw it to the next guy.
No, I think it's much harder. I think it's going to be a difficult day. I think Lynn Bowden is actually a good play today. I might even I have a little time now to think, do I start Lynn Bowden or Deontay Johnson? But again, don't get fancy, right?
But look at Jalen Hurts. He came in the other day, right? And he made Jeffries a play for that day. Jeffries, I probably had 2 catches all year, it seems.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's more than that. But then he made him relevant for the game, right? He threw a touchdown to him. And, so sometimes those players come in and they're like, all right, well, I don't have a 1, 2, 3-year history with these guys. I'm just going to throw it to you who's out there.
Yeah.
So, what I was going to bring up before was you were talking about the accuracy with, Herbert in college, and it was a little guys. Does moving to the NFL, and obviously this can happen, right? In college, maybe his accuracy was part the receivers he had. Right?
No, it's possible.
It's possible. Players are supposed to be in that position. And when you get to the NFL, the players are there where the ball is.
It's possible, and it wasn't bad enough to where he wasn't selected in the top 10 of the NFL draft.
People, right.
So, but when I talk about accuracy, I'm talking about in comparison to Burrow and Tua, at least on the college level. And by the way, Ezekiel Elliott has been ruled inactive, so he is out.
Oh, really?
Today. Yes.
Oh, interesting. So let me ask you a question.
Yes, Pollard. Yes, I would start Pollard if you have Pollard.
But I have Pollard, but I also have
Mostert or Pollard. I go with Pollard.
Mostert, Pollard, and Robinson.
Oh, Robinson. You got to go with Robinson.
Robinson and Pollard. Wow, so Zeke is out. Very interesting. Okay, I guess the ankle and everything caught up to him.
I guess so.
All right. Well, that is very interesting. Yep.
So yeah, those are your inactives for today. We already we didn't talk about it, but Alex Smith is inactive. So look for Colt McCoy today for the Washington football team, which again should be very interesting, at least both on the wide receiver side for someone like Terry McLaurin, but also for the defensive team as well. So
hopefully if you're in the playoffs, that's not your option. So
that's true. That's true.
Oh man, what a week. What a week. Well, the good thing is we're both in the playoffs, and we're man, I can't believe I'm starting Tony Pollard now all of a sudden instead of Mostert against Dallas. And of course, Pollard goes against San Francisco.
Right. Now we're back with San Francisco.
It's against San Francisco, and I have the San Francisco defense.
You are San Francisco heavy today.
I have just the defense at this moment, but it's going to be.
So here's I have an interesting question before we finish, and there's really no right or wrong answer. But when you're playing against somebody and you've got somebody on Monday night, or the person you're playing has somebody on Monday night, would you prefer to be the guy that has somebody, or the guy that's playing against somebody on Monday night?
Obviously,
I prefer to have the guy on Monday night so that you know where you're at, you know what you have to get from them,
right?
And it's fun to watch that as opposed to watching it and hoping that the person you're playing against dies.
Right.
I don't know. It's always very interesting. I always check my schedule to see which players I have.
I think I generally prefer having someone because, then you need 8 points or 9 points or whatever the case may be, 20 points. It's more exciting to see them get the catch and, get those points rather than the heartbreak of each catch goes against you.
Right.
Yeah. So I think I would definitely go with the positive end of that.
All right. Well, listen, I think that does it for today, right? And we just wish everybody good luck in the playoffs. I'm still going to struggle now that we know that Gaskin is out too. Lynn Bowden's going to be both running back and wide receiver today. Right. Do I go with him or do I go with Deontay Johnson? So it should be an interesting choice that I have to make here.
That is quite interesting going against Cincinnati, right?
No, New England.
No, but Pittsburgh.
Oh, Pittsburgh, correct.
Yeah. So, wow, that's yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know that's going to be a tough one for me, but I wish everybody else good luck. We're going to be back with you on Tuesday night and kind of go over what happened during the week. Hopefully, Brad and I will both be happy. If not, we're still going to do the show, but we might be a little depressed.
But we'll be playing each other potentially.
Oh, that's true.
So.
All right, Brad. Any final comments?
No. Have a great day. Let's hope for our players to do the best and see what happens.
All right. Take care, everybody.